How you doing out there, folks? Yes, it's me, Frankie, the unknown songwriter. Yep, I'm still unknown. After over, I guess, a year now that I've been miming these songs. That's about 5,000 songs. It's quite a bit. I'm going to discuss the comments. It's not too many. Some of the same comments I keep getting. I answer the person because that's one thing I do, unless I got so many that I couldn't answer, but not that many. They ask a question like, this is one of the questions I just got. Why don't you put some color or something in the picture? I already discussed this before. I made it like this. There is color. I showed before that there's color. But because of the lighting I have and the clothing I wear and all, dark clothes, it wouldn't show much in color. Anyway, I wanted to look old because I'm doing old songs. Wouldn't be able to really tell if someone just happened to be surfing on the internet and they saw the thing. Well, they see it's an old song. They might think I was singing it back in the day. So I like it like this. And the close-up. Somebody asked me, why so close? Well, I wanted it that way. Because for me, when I'm recording them, I can watch my lips, just like I am now, and match it up better that way with the recordings. It's part of the whole process I have now. When I started, it was a little different. I didn't know how I was going to do it. First I said, well, I only did songs I knew, like I knew Al Jolson. A lot of his songs I actually knew. So I did them, and I said, what about other singers that I don't know the lyrics? I'd have to memorize or something, and that's what I start doing. I start memorizing and taking each song before I did it and memorize it. I did a video on it, but then I start to get bored with that. It was getting to a point. I said, this is not. It wasn't coming out that good either. Lately, they've been coming out better because now I'm listening to it first. I get the tune in my ear and memorize the words on my mind. And then when I look at the video, I put it together when I hear the tune. It's coming out all right, but it's not, I don't know. I don't even know how I'm doing it. When I look at them, I'm surprised how good. Considering I'm not spending hours on a song till I get it to be spot on. Not doing that. So I wanted to mention that because I got that comment. Oh yeah, here's one. A good one. Do you wear the same clothes when you go outside? No, I don't, I told the guy. No, I don't. Here in the building, like I went downstairs a couple times, recently, and after I did the recordings, I didn't change and I went downstairs to the office. And I talked to one of the guys there, and he said to me, you look familiar. I said, well, I live here for a while. He said, no, I don't know. Then I told him about YouTube and all the songs, and he said, oh yeah, I saw you because I had this only thing I had the mask on. That was the only difference. That's probably why he didn't recognize me. But this clothes I wear for this. I got a lot of dark clothes like this. I wear the same clothes for this. Not when I go outside. No, I like my casual clothes, whatever. So I want to mention that. I'm going to divert to something else here. I just posted on Twitter 2 videos that I made. One was about the 1939 World's Fair, and one's about the life of Al Capone. I mention it because when I grew up, when I was a kid, my mother was always talking about Al Capone. Because my mother and father were both in show business in the 30s, 20s, 30s, mostly the 30s. And my mother kept telling me about Al Capone. So much about him. I was only a kid, so I didn't even know that time exactly who he was. Because I was born in 1946. And he, he died in 1947. So when my mother started talking about him, and then I started getting books and all on it. But she never admitted that she was related to him. And I got the idea that she was. Because she told me different things. Well, she told me about the show business and all. But she said when she got married to my father, around 1930, something like that, that Al Capone paid for the wedding and all. I said, what? He said, yeah. He was a friend of the family. We knew him and all, and he didn't go there. He didn't want to cause any ruckus there. You know, with him showing up, imagine he'd have to have armed guards and all. So he didn't want to ruin it, you know, for us. So, yeah, he paid for it. She said he's a family man. She was telling me all these things about him, and I said, wow. She told me she gave him a name, Snorky. My mother said she gave him that name. I think it was Snorky. The way he dressed and all. I'm just saying all this, and this is what came up. Now, I put those videos, and I think my mother must have been related to Al Capone somehow. As a kid, she wasn't going to say it. She wasn't going to tell me. Because she didn't want me to know that. Figure, oh, wow, I'm a gangster. Related to a gangster like that, and never found that in school and all. Imagine what that could lead to. She said it was nothing to be proud of, you know. So he kept talking all so many things. Oh, he had soup kitchens and he fed the poor. He used to line up kids and buy them ice cream and all kind of things. I mean, she would know it, I guess, if she lived there. I think she lived wherever they were, because they come from Italy, my mother's family and Al Capone's family. They came from Italy at the same time. I think they were neighbors and all when they lived in Chicago and then New York. So I've been looking it up, but something's funny about it, because I found out that it was all male, you know, in the Al Capone family in the beginning, and then there was a female born, and they named her Rosa. And it said, and I looked at Al Capone's family tree, and it said 1910 born and died in 1910. So it seems funny there wasn't much about her. So on that account, that was it. And then my mother, she was born in 1910. My mother had 2 birth dates, so there's something funny there. I knew about that. So she's born in 1910. And she died in 1987. It said it in her obituary that she was 77. I knew that. Okay, so she's born in 1910. And say she was that Rosa Capone. Well, Al Capone didn't want to bring her up with the gangsters, maybe. I don't know, something to it. And my mother's family, if it was her family, they lived nearby, and I think that Al Capone, as a baby, well, there was a baby, might have gifted her to the Serpi family. So she grew up with them as a Serpi. So then, a couple years later, 1910, I think in 1912, another female was born, Mafalda, Indian princess, I think it means, and she lived and all that. But then I read other accounts that Rosa grew up and everything, got married to one of the gangsters. The gangster was named Frank, my father's name. So that's something funny there. Different accounts. Then when Al Capone was in prison, it said the mother and the 2 daughters went to visit him. So it was Mafalda and Rosa then? I thought Rosa died in 1910. So it made me think my mother could have been the first female Capone. So that's what I've been trying to find out. That's why I posted those things on Twitter. And I did get an answer about it. I said I was going to make a video explain a little more. But I got a lot of information in the description of the 2 videos about this. I just was going to bring it up here, in this video, because maybe hear me talking about it, it might be a difference, to someone. People now have time in their hands. Anybody could write about it or research it if they ask me for more information. Because a lot of this stuff fits in. My father and mother were there in the 1930s. They got married. My father married my mother because she was younger than him, and they were in show business and all, and they didn't want any problem, that she's younger and all, and the relations and all. So they got married, and he was older than her. So the way this time frame, it can fit both ways. 1910, she would have been in 1930, she would have been 20. and they were both in the Chicago World's Fair, 1933. So I thought she was younger than that. Now, if she was born in 1917, the other birth date that she's supposed to have, then she would have been only in her teens for the, well, she would have still been 1933 when it started. She would have been about 16, so maybe he married her because of that. I'm not sure all about that. That's got to be checked out. It can be checked out. Now, I have a picture of my mother and father, a big picture, 1930, I guess. It's from Chicago. My father's dressed up, and my mother has a long gown with a trail and all. You know, the Italians have beautiful weddings, big weddings. And she told me that Al Capone paid for the wedding. He paid the money, took care of everything, and he didn't show up because he didn't want to disrupt it, of course. That's another thing that's, I don't know, I have some pictures, you know, about the show business with my parents. My mother did dancing and singing and all kind of things. She did stunt motorcycle riding, a whole bunch of stuff. She did fortune telling. My father was a song and dance man. He did barkers for sideshows. He was an animal trainer for Frank Buck in the 1939 World's Fair. And his name was Frank also, Frank Buck and Frank Leaper, but he changed it to Jack because of that. Because he didn't, they call him Frank, they might think he's Frank Buck, so he changed it. So this is a lot of things here that I was somebody to research it out with me. You know, anybody interested, might be a good story. Now say we get a DNA, if it's anybody that can compare my DNA with some Capone that might be around. I know there's a Capone, I think it's the grand niece of Al Capone. But I contacted her, but no, she don't respond. She probably thinks it's nothing, you know. Doesn't mean that she thinks she knows everything. You never know. If I got a DNA and there's some way I could compare it, and I did match, I'd be related to Al Capone somehow. Maybe not through my mother, but it could be. It could be. You never know. There's a lot more things that I had scenarios, you know, coincidences. But it would be after somebody would have to come or talk to me by over the phone, or maybe a video like this, or, you know, email and ask me a lot of questions, and they could try to look up things. So that's what I put that out there for. That I think that my mother could have been the first female Capone. She could have still been related some other way, you know, but I don't know, the way she talked about him sounded like to me. Of course, I was a kid then, and I didn't pay much attention to it. As I got older, my mother passed away, but, you know, I didn't want to mention too much to her, and she said, it's better that you don't know. She told me that. If you find out on your own, be better that way. And that's all I could get, you know. I didn't do too much about it. So I'll leave it at that. I would like to get closure on it. And if I'm not, fine. If someone wants to do a story, it's okay with me. My parents was in show business, so they could do it on their life, because there's not too much on the internet. I found my mother, a picture of her in the Italian village. It was the Chicago World's Fair. Picture of her, it's definitely her. She was standing back by the exhibit. And then I had another picture of her. Oh, I have. There was an exhibit called Olga the Headless Girl, and my mother told me all about it. You know, when I was a kid, and she said she was the nurse. She showed me the picture of that exhibit, you know, and then she said sometimes she was Olga, the Headless Girl. So a lot of things to put her in Chicago, you know, in Chicago around that time. So I just want to mention that if anybody's interested, or maybe a historian or somebody that might be doing research on something like that, might be interested, because if it does prove that I'm related, it would change history. Because then history doesn't have it. It has that this Rosa, the first female Capone, died, born and died in 1910. So my mother lived past that, so it could be. Okay, back to this now. Of course, you know I like to do a song here, and I couldn't think of any song that possibly I could do. But I did it before. There was a song, A Day in the Life of Bonnie and Clyde. And that was in Chicago. All this stuff was going on. All these gangsters and all. All this was going on. It's almost like a crime wave like we have now, with all these shootings and everything. It was like any time somebody could drive by and start shooting everything up. So I decided I found a song. Well, I did it before a while ago. The Day in the Life of Bonnie and Clyde. This is an appropriate song to do since I was discussing all this now. I'm going to try to do it. It's a little bit hazy in my mind. I didn't really look it over too much now. So we'll see how it comes out. Okay, A Day in the Life of Bonnie and Clyde by Torme. Try it.
It was the 10th day of August, way back in 33. A roller skating around in the town where I lived, who did I happen to see? Well, I was close to the bank when the battered old Lincoln pulled alongside. And you'll never believe who got out of that car. It was Bonnie and Clyde. She looked as sweet as a primrose, with hair the color of sand. And then I noticed the blue steel cold automatic she held in each hand. When I saw the big double-barrel shotgun he held at his side, then I knew that our bank was in for a visit from Bonnie and Clyde. And while they were in there, the birds didn't sing and the wind didn't blow and the world kinda held its breath. And I could just picture the folks in the bank with their hands in the air, awful trembly and scared to death. And then the bank door flew open and Clyde and Bonnie backed out. And they were giggling and laughing as happy as kids, of that there wasn't a doubt. As she got in the car, she looked down at me. What do you think? She gave me a grin, blew me a kiss, winked me a wink, and then they drove away. They shot him dead in a meadow. They lay there side by side, and lots of people for hundreds of miles around were glad to hear that they died. But I know somewhere there were a pair of women who cried. Yes, the broken-hearted mothers of four.